So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're going to move and bring people in now. And I want to welcome everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. Welcome. This is one of my favorite services of the year. Tonight, if you didn't even realize you were joining us for it, it's our confirmation service. So although I'll be addressing our now 11th grade students toward the middle of the service during the sermon slot, they really are highlighted tonight. They are our speakers. They are the ones who are going to be our teachers. And so we are so blessed to have them. And I was telling them before that, this is not a background, by the way. I'm in the sanctuary, and I usually don't lead services from the sanctuary on Friday night. But I know that they desperately wanted to be able to be here in the sanctuary with all of you. And so the next best thing that I could do is to be here symbolically for them. And so we're going to begin. We're going to put our prayer book into the chat. And if you look into the chat, you'll see it copied and pasted in just a moment. We're going to begin on page 10 with the singing of Hine Ma Tov. Hine Ma Tov U'manayim Shevet Achim Gam Ma Tov U'manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Hine Ma Tov 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 U'manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. The words mean how good it is and how pleasant it is that we can all gather together. A real joy at this time when we are celebrating our students. Hine Ma Tov Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומעניים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומעניים, שבת אחים גם יחד. So one of the joyous things about being a congregational rabbi is that there are multiple simchas, multiple occasions that of joy that happen on any given weekend. This weekend, by the way, we have 3 kids becoming B'nai Mitzvah. 1 tomorrow at what would have been their normally scheduled, and 2 who are rescheduled from when we had the pandemic. Or we are still in the midst of the pandemic, but when the pandemic caused us to have to cancel their simchas. And so before we hear from our students, learn why they care about Judaism, and understand what it means to really become a confirmand, right? To be able to stand in front of a community and speak about what Judaism means to them, we're going to celebrate the first of those simchas. And so it's my pleasure, and I will highlight you guys, to call the Smithen family to the front for everybody to unmute themselves as you light your candles and bless the wine tonight. We're on page 2.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Where's your Kiddush cup? Here it is.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kichanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'ahavar uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehila l'mikrae kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'harta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodeha ve'ahavra uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat.
Amen. And if you want to light our candles for us tonight as well, page number 2.
I'd like the candles. Page number 2, Scarlett. You got it? It's we're outside. Sorry. It's like there we go.
It's okay, we're not doing that.
And we join together as Ronnie Pressman leads us in the blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. And so tomorrow morning, we will, Scarlett, welcome you to the Bima for the first time as you give us your teaching in the same way that our 11th graders are going to give us a teaching tonight. So Yasher Koach, Mazel Tov. Feel free, by the way, in the chat, anybody who has anything that they want to say, either to the Smithen family or to any of our confirmands, feel free to write to them as well. And so with that, we're going to move. We're on page number 20 as we join together in the singing of Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai ananai 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 ene Shabbat kapla yaida ida lecha Dodi likrat kalai ananai 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 ene Shabbat kapla shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad Adonai echad yana yana nishab nikapla yaira lechadoti likala yana yana nishab nikapla likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor habiracha mirosh mikedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'makshavat chila lechadoti likrat kala yana nishab nikapla yaira lechadoti likrat kala yana nishab kapla. Verse 5, let me see your mouths moving. Hitoreri kiva ore kumi uri shirda beri kivod Adonai Allah lechadoti likrat kala yana nishab kapla yaira lechadoti likrat kala yana nishab kapla. We rise together, verse 9. Boi v'shalom atzeret bala gam besimcha uvetzola toch emunei am segula boi kala. Let's see you sing. Lechadoti likrat kala yana nishab kapla yaira lechadoti likrat kala yana nishab kapla. We can be seated together. And so, as I mentioned, tonight is confirmation. And this is a rescheduled event that, how naive I guess we were in May when we said, you know what? I gave our students a choice. We can either be virtual now or we can be in person in the fall, not realizing that we were going to also be in virtual in the fall. But what that did, I think, was it gave our students even more time to think about the kind of overarching question for tonight. So I always begin confirmation in the same way. And I say, look, you're going to stand up here on the day of your confirmation, and you're going to talk about why it matters to you that you're Jewish, the elements of Judaism that you admire, the way that it's impacted your life, the identity that you have. And the goal throughout all of our class time together is to try to figure out what the answer is for each of our students. Now, each of our students has a diverse array of answers for tonight, and we are honored that they are our teacher. And so our first speaker tonight will be Eleanor Bellman.
Hi, everyone. I think that the foundation of Judaism lies in the idea of obligation. Judaism is built on commandments or duties which are derived from our sacred covenant with God. Some of these commandments must be fulfilled directly to God. Other commandments apply to our families, to other Jews, or more broadly to all living things. While the ideas of responsibility and commitment might not sound like the most attractive values of a religion, I think that Judaism's emphasis on what we owe to each other is a distinctive and appealing element of our faith. One way to visualize these commitments we have as Jews is as a triangle. God is the apex, the highest point. We as individuals are the point on the bottom left, and other people are the point on the bottom right. It is required that we fulfill obligations to not only that highest being at the top of the triangle, but also to the people around us, horizontal relationships. Some examples of these horizontal commandments lie in other essential Jewish values like tikkun olam and tzedakah. At the root of our practices of social justice and charity is the idea that we are obligated to other people, so our religion does not allow us to shrink from injustice. As a Jew, I am not allowed to ignore global warming or economic inequality. I am not only morally compelled, but religiously commanded to resolve conflicts and create a more peaceful world. The importance of these horizontal relationships is also evident in the fact that Judaism is more focused on the world at hand than many other religions. We care most deeply about what happens here on earth, about the people around us. One practice in which I think this is relevant is how Jews are commanded to repent for our sins. In other religions, people are often asked to repent so they can achieve some personal final goal, like reaching heaven, but that isn't the case for most Jews. During Yom Kippur, for example, we are meant to seek forgiveness for our sins from the people we have actually damaged, and not just to seek redemption from God. It is very much about what we owe to other people. Our duty to others is most evident in the commandments themselves. Mitzvot in the Torah are not organized neatly with clear sections detailing what obligations we must fulfill to our families, and then a section about other Jews, and then a section about our direct commitments to God. No, they're all mixed together because each one of these relationships is imperative to Judaism, and they are interrelated. I think an essential part of this system of commitments is the emphasis on horizontal relationships in that triangle, on what we owe to each other. As a Reformed Jew, this approach really appeals to me because even though I don't always feel connected to God and struggle often with figuring out what I might owe to that highest being looking down on me from the top of the triangle, I don't have to struggle to know that I am obligated to other people. I think that many of the most important lessons we can draw from Judaism are about how we can better fulfill that commitment to those around us. Thank you and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And our next speaker is Gilad Pearlman Greenberg.
Hi, everyone. Leading up to confirmation, I was given this question: what is my connection to Judaism? In my 2 other essays before this that you haven't heard and won't hear, I talked about how I wasn't sure what I thought about Judaism, but I knew that I still had faith in it no matter what. But I'm coming to understand that you don't have to know exactly what you think about Judaism to be an active member of society. I believe that above all else, I'm a member of the Jewish community and that it defines my Jewishness most of all. Now that I'm fully a Jewish adult, I think that I will start to support my community in ways that only adults can, through tikkun olam, activism, and being there when my community needs it most. I believe that it is my duty as a functioning member of the adult Jewish community to keep my Judaism in my life, no matter where I go or what I do. I think that Judaism has become an integral part of how I live. Being in this pandemic has made me realize how much I miss attending services, going to Hebrew school, playing at high holidays, and seeing people chant Torah. Most of all, I miss seeing the community of people that I've spent my whole life with. My name is Gilad Pearlman Greenberg, and on this day I affirm my place among the Jewish people. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And our third speaker, before we move on with our next section of our service, is Carter Robich.
To me, the most important idea in Judaism is tikkun olam, repairing the world. Making the world a better place has always hit home to me, dating all the way back to my bar mitzvah project, where I collected sports equipment to send to kids in Africa who don't have access to such equipment. Since then, I have lobbied for climate change in Washington, D.C. I have worked at Tony's Kitchen multiple times, and I have done other food drives to collect food for the hungry. Doing all of this has made me realize how important it is to fix the world we live in. I mean, look around you. Look at the world right now. We have coronavirus killing thousands of people per week. We have an insane number of crime and gun violence killing way too many innocent people. And we have Australian wildfires killing over 500 million animals. These are only a few examples of things that are just so messed up in today's society. This is the only way our world. This is the only world we have, and we don't get any redos. So we should just make it the best out of what we have. However, it is not only these big projects that make the world a better place. It can be something as simple as staying home during the coronavirus pandemic or picking up a piece of trash when you see it laying on the sidewalk. Think about how much better of a place the world would be if every single person did these easy tasks, and it doesn't stop there. There is an endless list of things that you can do to blend into your everyday lifestyle that would make this world so much more enjoyable to live in. So tikkun olam is the most meaningful value in Judaism to me. Because at the end of the day, how are we going to live as Jews if there's no world to live in? And anyone has the power to create change. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And so we're going to rise together. We're on page 28 as we move into the Baruch Hu. Yai, nai, nai, yai, nai, 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 yai, nai, 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 nai. Yai, nai, nai, yai, nai, 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 yai, nai, 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 nai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. We're seated together as we turn to page 30.
This is an hour of change. Within it, we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it, we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai, Ma'avir Haravim.
Page 32. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael, Ahavta Torah u'mitzvot, hukim u'mishpatim, otanu lemadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shovenu v'kumenu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nizmach b'divrei Toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam. Hem chayenu v'yorech yameinu, v'yorech yameinu, uvahem negeh yomam v'layla, yomam v'layla. V'avatecha al tasir mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. We're going to move to our next speaker, Evan Rossi.
Good evening. As Jews, we foster and cherish our community. Through my Hebrew school education and beyond, I have not observed many instances of Jews truly engaging with their spirituality in solitude. Whether it is the high holy day services and celebrations, ordinary Shabbat gatherings, or service events in the area, Jews are there together. The integral part of a religion is that sense of community, the bond that ties us together, even if we don't know each other's names. It is important to ask why spiritual activities are enhanced to such a degree when in the company of other Jews. Maybe it goes back to our roots, as a religion as well as our education. In Hebrew school, we always learn about the Jewish people. When the Jews feel threatened, the whole community was under duress. In times of victory as well as defeat, the Jews were in it together. Similarly, when we first begin our Jewish education, it is often in the company of other friends or family. We learn about the language, foods, celebrations, and history in class, broadening our Jewish knowledge alongside our peers. It is possible that this is where the idea of community begins to take root and germinate. Other defining features of Judaism are of course important too. The concept of a single God, tzedakah, mitzvot, or holiness fill in the broad strokes of what it means to be Jewish. However, many of these things are enhanced with the addition of community. When I think of praying, my mind always pictures services in the temple filled with songs. Thinking about service or justice brings images of helping out in the community. In times of personal hardship, we go out of our way and comfort each other, spending our precious time to be together. Whether an innate sense of community is ingrained in our spirituality or humanity as a whole, there is no doubt that it is fundamental to Judaism. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And so our next speaker is Alma Smith.
Hello. What is the most important idea in Judaism? It's a big question, but to me, the most important idea in Judaism is one that maybe was not intended. It is the word for being fully present and ready, hineni. In my first year of being a madracha, that's an assistant teacher at Sunday school, I noticed the kids there would like to switch things up with attendance. Some of them opted to say hineni instead of ani po, and their infatuation with the idea of being different actually describes this Jewish idea very well. Being fully focused is giving something your undivided attention and going the extra mile to be present. It means using your mental energy to understand something to the best of your ability. I think this idea is so important to Judaism because Jews need to carry this out as best they can while discussing Judaism so deeply. Our class has focused intensely on philosophical matters. We could not have come to our own truths and conclusions had we not each been completely present. The ethics of Judaism could not have been decided had the rabbis a century ago not fully invested themselves into their faith. On the way to Sunday school last year, I wrote a poem. It's based on the word hineni. Here's the finished product. As I walk through this damp parking deck, its ceilings dripping with rainwater, the mist rolling in from outdoors, and the little puddles splashing at my feet, I came to the conclusion that I didn't feel like I was walking. I felt like I was sitting on my bed. I didn't feel present. Hineni in Hebrew, the language of my people, means I am here. Not physically, but mentally. So hineni, but not really. My mind felt elsewhere. I needed to live in the moment. I pulled my thoughts closer to my steps, closer to the wet cars and sounds of rain. I felt preoccupied, like I wasn't really moving. But as my hand reached the cool metal of the car door, I wondered, does this mean I'm not in the moment or as close to the moment as I can possibly get? In this poem, I ask a question that I still don't know the answer to, and maybe the answer may vary from person to person. In fact, I hope it does, because letting time slip by you is an age-old fear, one that is only human. We all know that there is no way to stop the passage of time. The conclusion that I've come to is that you must be fully present for the things you don't want to slip by you. So maybe don't stop to write some poetry every time you want something to last. Saying hineni might just be enough. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And with that poem in our ears and our hearts, we turn to page 34 as we join together for the Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Page 36.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levadecha v'dibarta bam v'shiftecha b'vetecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem Meretz Mitzrayim, Liot Lachem Lelohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem Emet.
So having just heard these words, which implore us to teach our children about the value of Judaism, we hear the next set of three speakers who are going to speak their truth to that very theme. And so our next speaker is Alex Feldman.
What is the most important idea in Judaism? A simple question that could warrant as little as a few words in response, such as tzedakah, prayer, or community. Though what do these values really mean to a person? And how might they interpret and experience them differently from their dictionary definitions? This is the question I attempted to answer. In my opinion, the Jewish value of loving thy neighbor as yourself is undeniably the most important Jewish idea. But to be completely honest, I've experienced and believe this amazing value to be true in a very different way from its typical interpretation. Usually, people think of this idea as a give and you shall receive sort of mechanism, where we tell ourselves if we treat other people the way we want to be treated, then they will treat us similarly. Personally, though, I think of this ideology as too concerned with doing something purely to receive personal gain, and that it is representative of the epitome of our selfish thought process as human beings. Instead, I look at this idea completely differently. Rather than thinking, love thy neighbor as yourself, I rearrange the equation entirely and think, love yourself as you do your neighbor. Viewing it in this way, where you are modeling how to love yourself based on the ways you've loved other people, rids of the underlying selfishness ideologies in the original commandment, and instead suggests this essential idea that one must love their neighbor to learn how to love themselves in a healthy and selfless way. I see it as this: in a situation where one first loves themselves before their neighbor, they will judge the world through a black and white system of things that are similar and different from them, making them self-centered and self-absorbed. But in a situation where people first love their neighbors and everything in the world that is both similar and different from them, and then learn to love themselves, then they will truly live in an unselfish world. So the question is, will we reach that day where people love themselves as they do their neighbor? Or will we always love our neighbor as we do ourselves? Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Our next speaker is Madeline Sarayski.
Being Jewish has always been an important part of my life. My Jewish education started from a young age when I went to a Jewish preschool. I remember when it was my turn to host Shabbat, my family would come to school and bring challah and grape juice for my class. On those days, I felt really special. Fast forward to elementary school, where I was always the only one or one of 2 or 3 kids in my class that was Jewish. My mom would come into my class every year and explain Hanukkah to my classmates, bringing latkes and applesauce to share. Fast forward again to 6th grade, when we did a unit in social studies on Judaism. I remember feeling proud that I knew all of the stories, traditions, and meanings behind everything, and I was so excited to share my religion with all of my classmates. That feeling of pride I felt in 6th grade has not gone away. Every time I hear a story about Jews throughout the world and their accomplishments, I feel that pride. Likewise, every time I hear about an anti-Semitic incident, I feel disgust. Although I often do not know the person, group, or temple that has been affected by the act of anti-Semitism, as a Jew, I feel for them and share their pain. Being part of the Jewish community means that I share in its triumphs and in its suffering. Being Jewish may subject me to acts of hate or intolerance throughout my life, but it also adds so much meaning and value into my life. I don't love going to services or Hebrew school all the time, but I'm reminded of how much I love being Jewish whenever my family gets together to celebrate a Jewish holiday or bar bat mitzvah. Every Jewish holiday is always a big event, with family coming from all throughout the Northeast to celebrate together. We prepare days in advance, filling the house with smells of challah, matzo ball soup, kugel, and brisket. These are the times when I feel the happiest with my Judaism. When my family is all together celebrating Jewish survival and the stories of our ancestors through food, songs, and prayers, I can't imagine not being Jewish. I often take these times for granted, but when I stop and think about it, I'm so grateful for them. I love celebrating all of our holidays, taking part in all of our customs, and eating all of our delicious food. I know throughout my life I will uphold these traditions and eventually start new ones with my own family. To me, being Jewish means family, laughter, good food, and lively customs that I will never give up. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And we move from Madeline to Zoe Jelski now as our final speaker before we move into our next set of prayers.
Good afternoon. Hope. Everyone has it. And as Jews, we are taught hope from a very young age. We hope the Messiah will one day come, that anti-Semitism will be eliminated. The fact of the matter is, though, no matter how much we hope for something and take action to try to fix things, our hopes very rarely come true. In my opinion, hope can be something we rely on too much. In some ways, we use hope for better as a scapegoat for our current mistakes or situations. All our lives, people ask us how we hope to see ourselves or our world in 5, 10, 15 years from now. Honestly, though, can we really answer that question? We have no idea what the world will be like in any given amount of time. We don't even know if we'll be alive at that given time. Even if I don't wind up being alive in the next 5, 10, 15 years, there are many things that I hope for the entire world of the future. One thing I would like for future Earth is peace. You might be thinking, oh, she means world peace. That's impossible. Well, yes, there will always be people disagreeing on topics and fighting. Isn't that what all makes us unique? The world would be way too boring if everyone got along perfectly. That means I could never argue with my brother about how to sweep the floor correctly and his table manners. My definition of peace is very different. I like to picture the world as a team, where everyone can respect people's opinions and work together to reach a goal. Yes, teammates will have disagreements, and we are not always going to get along with everyone we meet, because that would be very far-fetched. But minus our insignificant differences, don't we all really want the same thing? Love, respect, most importantly, staying alive. Isn't that what we're all trying to do, especially as a Jewish community? War is inevitable in some cases, but sometimes a simple conversation and education can change everything. Yes, there will be days when we are thrust in uncomfortable situations. It can feel like a fish out of water. At the same time, that's a part of life. Very recently, I have been in an environment where for the first time in my life, I was the only Jewish person there for a very long amount of time. Having people question your beliefs and how you act can be hard. When we are grouped together as one people, we are often stereotyped as always wearing payots or long skirts, or that we run the world or are obsessed with money. I believe in situations like that, you cannot get mad. In my experience, when comments like this have been thrown at me, the best way to deal with this is education. Not everyone knows better, and when taught the facts, people can become much more empathetic and understanding about situations. I can't deny that this won't be easy, but this is something I would hope someone, whether in 50 or 500 years, gets to be a part of a friendly world where people can be educated and taught real true facts so we can strive for a better community for ourselves and the people around us as well.
Thank you. And so after hearing about the words of hope, we move now into page 40, and we sing a song that is emblematic of the hope of the Jewish people, that we were once slaves in Egypt, and now we are free and can sing this song of freedom. Mi Chamocha, page number 40. we're on page 42 as we join together in the words of Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom Behamidenu Shomreinu Lechaim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Lishalom Behamidenu Shomreinu Lechaim. The indented portion on the bottom. Ushmor Seitenu Lechaim u'shalom me'ata v'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. We move to our next set of speakers, and our first speaker is Millie Thomas.
What is the most important idea in Judaism? This question has been asked to me numerous times over the 16 years in which I've been alive, whether it be from my mom, my grandmother, or now, Rabbi Katz. Although this reoccurring question seems to find its way throughout my life, I never really thought about how I would answer it, so why not now? There are hundreds upon hundreds of Judaic ideas that have been around for hundreds upon hundreds of years. And even though it would seem that this question is very hard, if not impossible, to truly answer, I think that I have found the solution that speaks to me personally. The most important idea in Judaism, according to me, is the idea of acceptance. Although this idea may not seem very Jewish in regards to older Jewish ideas, this concept is definitely present in Reform synagogues today, much like this one. I chose acceptance specifically because of this synagogue. A lot of you don't know this, but I transferred to this synagogue near Tamid last year. Even though I knew some of my friends were here already, I was so nervous that I wasn't going to gain the acceptance from other people within the community. However, a couple of days into the year, I came to a conclusion with myself. I wasn't nervous, I was excited. By seeing that I was already accepted into this beautiful community only within the first couple of days has been something that has stuck with me from then, now, and will forever. This acceptance has taught me something very important. No matter who or what you are, you will be accepted into this very special, not only community, but family. And that's the part that I love the most about Judaism, acceptance of all kinds. During one of the classes of Hebrew school, Rabbi Katz brought up the idea of interracial and gay marriages, and them being accepted into the synagogue. In other forms of Judaism, and even in other religions, this case scenario would be considered a wrongful act, and they would not be accepted within the community. But what I love about Ner Tamid and Reform synagogues is that they don't care who you are, where you came from, or what your sexuality is. As long as you are willing to explore Judaism and how it affects you, then you'll be a part of this congregation with welcoming arms. It is very important to me that everyone feels that they are accepted somewhere, because there are going to be so many times within someone's life in which they feel that they are alone or have no place to go to feel a sense of safety. But with the community such as this, where you can express yourself without being judged by others and let your freak flag fly without being criticized, you'll never be alone. It is very hard to find these special places, but never too hard to try, even if you feel nervous. And if you're lucky, that nervousness will turn into excitement, and you will realize that you have found a place where you can be you and blossom into the best and most exquisite self. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Our next speaker is Ethan Tipping.
Ethan Tipping, and this day I affirm the Jewish way of life. At my age, myself and many other of my Jewish peers found it difficult to balance the responsibilities of being a Jew and a regular teenager. Prior to this year, I thought that being a good Jew would be to become bar mitzvah, read prayers, come to temple on the high holidays, and ultimately become confirmed. However, today as I stand here ready to make the transition to a confirmed Jew, I have found that the core truths of Judaism are present in the most basic aspects of my daily life. One of these truths is the concept of mitzvot, or the commandments of God. In total, there are 613 mitzvot, ranging from common sense to the absurd. All of these mitzvot represent an ethical standpoint that God has commanded us to follow in life. If I have learned anything from my 16 years of life on this earth, it is that the world can be a very cruel and unforgiving place. I have made it a core part of my being to try and combat as many injustices in the world as I can, whether it be tagging wild sea turtles in the Caribbean or something as simple as giving change to a person in need. In the street, being an advocate for change is a defining part of who I am. Although something like tagging sea turtles isn't directly a mitzvot in and of itself, the main principles of the action can be applied to different mitzvot. For instance, the mitzvot not to leave a beast that has fallen down beneath its burden unaided can be applied to the act of tagging turtles. In a sense, tagging turtles is like helping a beast of its burden of humanity's pollution. By living a life of virtue and kindness, one is already living the life as a Jew. My name is Ethan Tipping, and this day I affirm the Jewish way of life. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And we move to our final speaker in this section, Joe Najalski.
Hi, everyone. I've never thought about what the most important idea in Judaism was. So I thought of a Jewish idea that I believe to encompass all the values or ideas in the Jewish religion. I believe that the belief that once the world is worthy, the Messiah will come to the world, worthy being that there is no sin left in the world. I think this idea in Judaism is so important because it gives incentive to be a better person. The way I like to look at it is that the Messiah is in all of us, and we as individuals all have the potential to do good in our lives and bring out the Messiah in all of us. This covers a lot of major Jewish values, such as tikkun olam, tzedakah, and the command that states, love thy neighbor as thyself. In other words, we must do all of those things so the world can become worthy as a whole, and we can become a better people and in turn, a better world. Some might say, well, that's impossible. The Messiah will never come because there will always be evil in this world. In my opinion, that's why the belief is so great, because it tells us that we can never stop trying to be as good as we can possibly be. If there's a great person, they can always be greater. Like the great Jedi Master Yoda says, powerful you may be, but much to learn you still have. You are never finished trying to be someone that has a good heart. If you do one good thing one day, that doesn't mean you can do a bad thing the following day. Overall, I would sum up belief as doing as much as you can to be the best person that you can be. There are many ways to apply this to your everyday life. For me, this part of Judaism can help me in so many ways, like sports and school, and like I mentioned, being just a better person overall. If I fail sometimes, I must forgive myself and others because to forgive is divine. Another part of the religion that would make it better for the Messiah to come to earth. That is also philosophy that brings us close to the Messiah and all of us. This can help with so many things, like doing well in school, or most importantly, trying to be a good person. At the beginning of my Jewish experience, I didn't care much about being Jewish. I didn't realize it meant something special to me as an individual or others. But as I grew older and attended the confirmation classes, I found that this religion has a lot of things to offer and many different stories and philosophies behind its religion and its followers. I'm very glad I stuck with it throughout all these years, and today I affirm the Jewish way of life. Have a nice evening and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So I'll invite us to rise as we turn to page 46. And after this opening meditation, asking God to open our lips, we move in silence, either with the traditional words on the page or the words in our heart. If you logged on recently, we'll paste the prayer book into our chat. That way we can make sure that everyone has it. And look, this is a time for introspection. And so if something that you heard struck your fancy, something that you want to think more about, take some time among your prayer to think about it as well. Page 46. Adonai sifatai tiftach Ufiagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. We continue in silence. We're on page 62. Yiyu leratzon imrefi imrefi ve'yon libi lefanecha. Yiyu leratzon imrefi imrefi ve'yon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri ve'goali. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri ve'goali. Yehu leratzon imrefi imrefi ve'yon libi lefanecha. Yehu leratzon imrefi imrefi ve'yon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri ve'goali. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri ve'goali. And to kick off our last set of speakers, it's my pleasure to call up Sam Rosen.
Okay. A mitzvah is defined as a commandment commanded by God to be performed as a religious duty. This, while being the direct definition, isn't the most accurate description of the word. This word, mitzvah, means so much more. The unofficial meaning is a good deed, and a common idea of being Jewish is to complete these good deeds, or mitzvot. The ultimate mitzvah being to better those around you and to better those out of yourself. Now, 613, that's the number of official written mitzvot. But a mitzvah, however, cannot be limited by a number, as there are countless good deeds and thus countless mitzvot. At the common age of 13, little Jewish boys and little Jewish girls take part in their bar and bat mitzvahs, and upon the completion of an important mitzvah in reading the Torah, these children make a promise. This promise, known as a mitzvah project, are these kids' pledges to make their community better or to help out someone in need. Now, I haven't read all 613 mitzvot, but I'm fairly certain they don't say to help out at a soup kitchen, collect donations, or teach others. These are just a few examples of mitzvot that are unlisted but are very important. The mitzvah isn't for the person carrying it out, but is instead for those affected by it. That's the whole point, to help out others. The central idea of Judaism, the way I see it, is in mitzvot. With this set of commandments, both written and unwritten, we as Jews try to lead the betterment of society. Not caring for ourselves, but instead for others, is one of the things we as Jews strive for. Most mitzvot benefit others, and that's the goal. For centuries, Jews have led some of the most important fields, like science, tech, and protection. Now, without these, society today would not look how it does, and all of these things were brought through the work of mitzvot. I believe that's the most important thing in Judaism, to help out others and help them through the work of mitzvot. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. And so our final speaker tonight is Casey Goldberg.
Hi, I'm Casey Goldberg. I had a hard time writing this essay. Judaism has always played such an important role in my life, but I never really gave a thought to why. After giving it some thought, I narrowed it down to one word: community. Through Judaism, I not only feel connected to people at my temple or in my school, but also to people from around the world, people I've never met. I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that everyone on this call has met someone Jewish without previously knowing they were Jewish. We've all experienced the excitement when you realize that you have this one key thing in common. At this point, almost nothing else matters. You're instantly closer than you were 10 seconds ago. To me, this ability to find friends and family and strangers is what Judaism is all about. Judaism has given me two great communities. The first is my Hebrew school class. On the first day of Hebrew school in third grade, I would never in a million years have thought that I would still be going to class. Hebrew school was a path to my bat mitzvah, where I would get a big party, and that was it. What I didn't know at the time was how large of an impact Hebrew school would have on me. I immediately became friends with Alma and Ellie. We would sit on the emergency stairs in the basement and chant the Yotzer Or to each other over and over until we got it perfect and could go see more Nami. And between the chanting and the singing and rare moments of goofing off, I gained lifelong friends. As time progressed, I realized that Hebrew school wasn't just a thing I had to push through so I could have a big party. It was often a highlight of my week. It was a place where I not only got to see my friends, but where I could talk and not feel judged, where I respected my classmates and they respected me. And we had ridiculously insightful and meaningful conversations for how young we were. We talked about the meaning of Judaism and about our relationship with God and the Jewish faith. We didn't always agree on everything, but through the disagreement, we learned new things about ourselves, each other, and our religion. The second great community given to me by Judaism is my camp. Every summer since second grade, I've attended Your J Camp Harlem. And I know it's cheesy because it's the slogan, but I really think they hit the nail on the head. It's a place where friends become family and help define what being Jewish means to us. Camp has always been the place where I felt the most Jewish, the most connected to my faith and to God. My camp community, my family, is rooted in the same beliefs: mitzvot, tikkun olam, and rachamim. We sit together and we learn about our faith and about what being Jewish means. For me, the aspect of Judaism that resonates most is tikkun olam. Overall, I think the core of Judaism is community. I think oppressed cultures form greater bonds than others. Although as Jews today, we don't often face the life or death struggles that our ancestors faced, we all know what it's like to be singled out for our religion. Judaism is about people, bonded by shared traditions and stories that go back centuries, being there for each other, creating kahila. Dan Nichols said, "Each one of us must play a part, each one of us must heed the call, each one of us must seek the truth, each one of us is a part of it all." To that I add, each one of us is important, because without each other and without the sense of community that Judaism breeds, our sacred religion would have died in the desert a long time ago. Today I'm here, sitting in front of my community, proclaiming myself as Jewish, because whenever I've felt lost, I've always found a place here. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom. And so we take a moment, speaking of community, and we think of those in our midst, those community members, and those loved ones of community members who are ill and who are in need of healing. So I'll invite you to once again turn your attention to the screen as we see scrolled names of people for whom we're thinking, and we'll invite you in the chat to add names of your own. We're on page 253.
the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
Thank you. And so before I get a chance to address our confirmands, it's my pleasure to call up our Director of Education, Iris Schwartz, to say a few words to you.
Am I unmuted? Yes.
You're good. You're good.
Okay, so the first thing I want to, of course, say is Shabbat Shalom, and also Mazel Tov to Scarlett and to her family. I just can't believe this day is here already, and Mazel Tov on becoming a bat mitzvah tomorrow. I'm sitting here listening to all these wonderful words from our confirmation class, and truth is, I'm sitting here thinking, where did the time go? When did you all grow up? Because I have known some of you since you've been 5 years old, and others have joined the group along the way, and we have done so many things together. I've had the wonderful opportunity to be your teacher for some of you. We've gone to RAC together. I've worked with some of you as madrachim. We've done all kinds of mitzvah projects. We've did all kinds of programs together. And I was absolutely just so proud of you. And I want to tell you how inspiring your words were to me this evening. I just wanted to share with you a couple of thoughts. I was thinking of the Ten Commandments. I know most people don't sit here and think of that, but I was thinking of them because traditionally during confirmation, the Ten Commandments are read. So I was thinking of that and thinking of when God gave the Ten Commandments, God was addressing the entire nation of Israel, which meant God was addressing over 600,000 people. They were all assembled at the foot of Mount Sinai. And the first commandment starts, I am the Lord your God. And I said, this sounds like a good place to start, doesn't it? God is, after all, addressing hundreds of thousands of people. But if you look at the Hebrew that's used, there's something interesting that you're going to find. The Hebrew of these first words uses the word Elohecha, which is the singular form of the word your. So knowing this, you have to ask the obvious question, wouldn't it have made more sense for God to have said your in the plural? After all, God was addressing 600,000 people. But I'm not the only one who noticed this, clearly. The rabbis noticed this also. And what the rabbis wrote about this was this. What I found was that God is like a mirror. The mirror never changes, but everyone who looks at it sees a different face. 1,000 people may look at it, and it reflects each of them. Thus, the text does not say, I, the Lord, am your God, addressing everybody, but I, the Lord, am your God, addressed to the individual. God's mirror is one, but the reflections in it are many. Each of you being confirmed tonight looks into God's mirror and sees a particular reflection, an individual reflection of God. Each of you is an image of God put on this earth to do God's work. Discovering how to be God's image, how to kindle the spark of God in you, how to become God's partner in the ongoing work of creating the world and repairing its brokenness, this is the task of the journey that lies ahead of you. And truly, it's my hope that you each continue to take this responsibility seriously, and that this confirmation is just one of the many Jewish milestones in your Jewish journey. I really do hope that throughout your lives, each of you continues to keep looking into God's mirror, and that you always see yourself as God's partner on earth, doing what needs to be done to bring wholeness to the world. And after listening to everything that everybody said, I think we're in a good place, and I know that this will happen. So I really want to say Mazel Tov to you, to your families on the occasion of your confirmation. I couldn't be more proud of you. I feel like you're all my own kids. And I really look forward to moving forward together in the years ahead, whether it be in our 10th, our 11th and 12th grade class or doing other projects and programs together, because I know that we can count on you to really be the future of our people and to really make a strong Jewish future. So Mazel Tov again. I'm very proud of you. Mazel Tov to your families. And I look forward to seeing you soon. And I'm done.
So now it's my turn to address you. And I put my computer onto the gallery mode as opposed to the speaker so I can look at each of you, even though you don't realize I am. Because in this week's Torah portion, we have a story that is actually one of my favorite stories in all of the book of Genesis. It's the story of the Tower of Babel. Now, if you encountered this before, you'll know the story. It's very famous. A group of people decide that they want to build this tower up to heaven. And in the middle of building the tower, God realizes that God needs to stop them. So what does God do? God confounds their speech. God says, okay, no, you're no longer speaking one language. Some of you will speak this language and some of you will speak that. Some of you will speak this language until finally they can't communicate with one another, and not realizing that they have the ability anymore to build, they go off into the different corners of the world and they basically populate the earth and they start humanity. Now, the reason that I love this story is not necessarily because of the story itself, though it's an interesting story, but that the story makes no sense, right? It's not clear when you read the Bible why it is that God decides to take this group of people who are building this tower. What's wrong with building a tower, building it up to heaven? And so they decide that they are going to have to speak different languages. It confounds the imagination. And so for generations, Jews have wrestled with this story in the same way that you have wrestled to make Judaism relevant for you. Now, when we began learning together last year, I said to each of you that you need to figure out what are the questions that you still have, the things that you're still pulling at you. You had to write it down for me, and I built the curriculum around your questions. And you asked amazing questions. You asked questions about God. You asked questions about what happens to me after I die. You asked questions about Israel. You asked questions about the nature of community and what Reform Judaism is all about. And so we together learned each of those things. And I'd like to think that some of our conversations were found in your really thoughtful remarks tonight. But what you did tonight is above and beyond anything that any curriculum can do, because you put yourself squarely within the Jewish tradition. Look, we inherit this rich tradition. It's got beautiful texts, beautiful prayers, beautiful melodies, beautiful rituals, beautiful community, beautiful sense of self. But the truth is, it means nothing. It's just a shell until you put yourself in the middle of it. Judaism needs you to stand squarely in the center and to shape the Jewish world you see around you in the same way that people have been doing for generations. And I want to use the Tower of Babel as a quick microcosm to talk about that. Because you may not realize it, but because the story makes no sense, people have made the story speak distinctly to its time. So therefore, a guy named Ovadia Sforno, who lives in the 16th century in the midst of the Inquisition, can say, you know what the big problem was? That in the midst of building the tower, everybody made everybody else all worship the same religion. And so making everybody worship the same religion was the wrong thing. And that's why God punished them with giving them multiple languages. He made the Inquisition, right, which many of you learned about when we went to Amsterdam together, the central focal point of the lesson of the Tower of Babel. A guy named Ibn Ezra, who lived a couple hundred years earlier, he lived in a time of this kind of renaissance of philosophical thought. He said the big problem was that people only had one way of thinking because there was only one language. And if you only have one language, that doesn't give you the variety of all the different ways to describe things. Think about the fact that the Inuit, right, the Eskimos, have multiple words for snow that we don't have, because multiple languages create nuance in each of those individual languages. Jews, by the way, have like 15 different words for being happy, more than English, certainly. And so he says that the Tower of Babel The wrong thing was that they didn't have the philosophical discourse and variation that he did, right? Rashi, who lives in the time of the Crusades. Rashi dies in 1104. He's our most famous philosopher and commentator, and lives through the Crusades, which happened in 1096. Says the big problem is that they were building a tower because they wanted to wage war on God. This is a guy who saw war around him and said the problem with tower was all about the war. He put himself in the center of the story in the same way even Ezra put themselves in the center of the story, in the same way that Ovadia Sforno put himself in the center of the story, and in the same way you are putting yourself in the center of the Jewish story. Every one of you is colored by certain features of your life. Maybe it was the way you were raised. Maybe it's the town you're growing up in. Maybe it's the fact that all of us are white. Maybe it's the fact that some of us are men and some of us are women. But everybody is shaped by your own identity, and you bring Judaism and shape that around with you. And Judaism is the richer for it. You have, for example, an Eleanor-hued Judaism, or a Gilad-hued Judaism, or a Carter-hued Judaism, or an Evan, or an Alma, or an Alex-hued Judaism. You have a Madeline and a Zoe and a Millie-hued Judaism, an Ethan and a Jonah, a Sam, or a Casey-hued Judaism. Your Judaism looks the way it does because of who you are, and you bring yourself fully into it. And because of that, the Judaism that you teach your community, that you're going to teach children one day, should you choose to have them, that you're going to choose to teach your friends and your family, is going to look different than my Judaism or Iris's Judaism or Ronnie's Judaism or anybody's Judaism, because you make it your own. And tonight you showed what it looked like when each of you came and brought your full selves and said, this is the most important part of Judaism for me. This is the most important value. This is the most important ritual. This is the most important theme. And so we are better for having heard you, and the Jewish community will be better because you are in it. Because every single one of you has so much to offer. Because every single one of you is unique and beautiful, wonderful, created, like our Torah portion says this week, in the image of God. And for that reason, every single one of you will shape your tradition in a way that will make it better. So to our confirmands, I want to invite you to rise. And holding this Torah, which I wish I could wrap you in a giant tallis and hold the Torah before you, but virtual has to be the next best thing. We want to offer you this blessing, the oldest blessing that exists in the Jewish tradition, the Priestly Benediction. And when we do that, I want to invite everybody assembled who is not you to put your hands up to the screen as if they are blessing you too.
Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May God bless you and may God protect you.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka.
May God cause God's light to shine upon you and give you grace.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom.
May God always smile upon you and grant you a life of wholeness and peace. As together we say, Amen. Confirmation is just the beginning. It is not the end. And so from now until the end of the service, I want to invite everybody here who is not you, those who are here assembled, your family and your friends, to type in maybe a lesson that you have about Judaism, something that you came to, right? Not when you were 16 years old, but something from 16 until whatever age you are at, an insight that you've gained about Judaism that I hope that you'll share with our confirmands. And so please, I want to see many, many comments into our chat. As together we rise and we turn to page 282 for Elena.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo hasanu kigoye haratzot, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 287.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
We're seated briefly as our thoughts turn to those that we've loved and who we have lost, those who are in our minds and hearts, but who are no longer with us physically in this world. We turn to page 294 as we recall the following names: Ruth Asher, Solomon Berger, Irene Bronstein, Rose Brenner, Molly Feiertag, Joseph Forim, Leo Forim, David Glukoft, Howard Goldstein, Ruth Grossman, Edward Gutterman, Walter Haight, Rose Chapman Levin, David Lustgarten, William Mendelson, Klaus Mead, Irving Nepo, Pauline Nussbaum, Hal Kenneth Potters, Benjamin Roth, Estelle Rosenberg, Louis Shapiro, Daniel Silverman, Benjamin Smith, Jack Sternman, Carl Strauss, Herbert Sugarman, Norman Watton, and Irving Zazik. And those who are in their Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning, we think of our member Judy Weston, wife of Josh Weston, and Eve Krebs, grandmother of Jonathan McGalnick. In addition, I'll invite anybody who is at this point within a year of mourning a loved one in Shana to type their name into the chat or to type anybody's name for whom we might have forgotten. And so we recall those names, bringing them into our hearts and minds. As together we turn again to page 294 and we rise for the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemi rabba. V'yamad divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayachon uv'yomachon uv'chayed l'chol Beit Yisrael. Bagala uvizman kariv v'imru amin. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'olam olamei amaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha barichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Damiram b'yama v'imru amin. Yehi shloma rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'oko Yisrael v'imru amin. Ose shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'oko Yisrael v'imru amin. Please be seated. And so you can take a look to all our confirmands and see just the really thoughtful things that each of us, that each of our fellow congregants and family members all typed about the meaning of faith, good wine, for example, about what to do if you feel lost, about the importance of making the world a better place. Every single one of you has the potential not only to leave your mark on Judaism, but really to leave your mark on this world. I have faith in you. I believe in you. You are a special class and you should know that. And so I hope that we get to see each other, b'shana haba'ah, next year in person, and very soon in this room. And when we do, I'll give you a special blessing in front of the ark when we can. And really, this is the beginning of what I hope will be many more celebrations to come. But with that, we're going to move now into our closing song. Just a few quick announcements before we do. Tomorrow morning, we've got Torah study at 9 a.m., 10 a.m. Once again, our services continue as we welcome Scarlett, as we said before, to the Bima for the very first time as bat mitzvah. In addition, Ronnie, do you have anything you want to add? I've got a few other announcements before I do.
As Shabbat nears its end, we make Havdalah at 7:30 tomorrow evening. And once again, it's called Havdalah Plus because we'll be playing games, and by all means, come and join us. If you haven't seen your Igeret, or maybe you glanced over it, I will be starting the Creatives Beit Midrash. We did this last year, and unfortunately, due to COVID and lots of other things, we had to stop. But we will be meeting on the first Wednesdays of each month. Please sign up in advance so I know who's going to be there with us. And it's a great opportunity. It doesn't mean you have to be an artist. You could be a musician, a writer, a singer, a cook, etc. Join us.
Great. And on the 29th, which is Thursday night, we've got so many talented congregants. We are blessed on the 29th to be welcoming one particular congregant who is the head of extremism for the Anti-Defamation League. He is going to be speaking about all the different groups that you've probably been hearing about: QAnon, the Boogaloo Boys, the Proud Boys, and learning from them. So learning from him about them and what we need to know, especially as Jews, about anti-Semitism in the United States and what extremism means. And so his name is Oren Siegel, and we're pleased to have him speak about these groups, especially so near to the election. And so with that, we're going to close page 321 with Adon Olam. Adon Olam Hashem Malach B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra V'yein Nasa V'chesed Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'yacharei Kiklot Hakol Levado Yimlok Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Omer Vehu Yeh B'tifara Vehu Yeh B'tifara Vehu Echad Li'ein Sheni Ve'ham Shilo Le'akira Ve'li Reishit Ve'li Tachlit Ve'lo Ha'oz Ve'ham Yisra Ve'lo Ha'oz Ve'ham Misra Hu Eli Ve'chai Goali Ve'tzor Chevli Ve'etzara Ve'hu Nisi Umanosli Menat Kosi Ve'yom Ekra Menat Kosi Ve'yom Ekra Bi'ado Avkid Ruchi Ve'etishan Ve'ayira Ve'yim Ruchi Gebiati Adonai Li Ve'lo Ira Adonai Li Ve'lo Ira. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. To our confirmands, if you want, stick around. Everybody else can feel free to.